Hi everybody, welcome. Welcome to episode 2 of Magic is Real. I'm gonna give it a minute just for people to pop on. And in that time, I'm gonna go ahead and share this video out to, here we are, out to my group, the Repatterning Parlor, which if you're not yet already a member, I would love to invite you to join us. There we go. All right, now I'm doing this series over the next week and a half because I am currently enrolling for the autumn 2020 round of my course Myths and Magic, which is specifically a course in magic that it's geared toward narrative magic and working specifically with character and archetype. So it's open to all levels. If you have any sort of a spiritual practice, or even if you just want to have a spiritual practice, and especially if you're someone who's especially creative, playful, maybe you're an artist, and maybe you've noticed that sometimes the kind of art that you're making or engaging with has an effect on you and your energy and your vibe and the kind of things that happen to you in your reality. If you've ever had that experience before, then this course is definitely for you, especially if you want to know more about how that works and how to harness that power in order to be intentional about the changes that you're creating in your reality and the energies that you're embodying and all the things that you're calling in. So if you're interested, go ahead and you can check out all the details are in the caption of my profile picture. There's a bunch of posts on it in the past couple weeks as well on my profile if you want to scroll back and learn more. But feel free also just to shoot me a PM. Let me know that you're interested. We do it all in a private Facebook group as well as weekly Zoom lectures and weekly group calls. We're going to be doing those webinars on Sunday afternoons, those group calls on Thursday evenings, and there will be a private Facebook group for 24/7 support, where we will also post our sort of fun homework, where we'll be posting selfies when we play dress up, posting our vision boards for the energies that we're looking to call in, the stories and the narratives that we're looking to embody. And it's going to be super fun. Everyone picks one archetype to work with during the course. Hi, Gabrielle. Yay. Gabrielle is a veteran of this course. It's been such a joy having her in the container. So if you have any more questions about it or you think you're interested, we'll go ahead and we'll set up a call. We'll give a chat about it and see if it feels like it's in alignment for you at this time. I know especially with Halloween being on the radar and with us dealing with a pandemic, there's a lot of disappointment in the collective about the fact that we don't get to experience Halloween this year the way that we're typically used to. And so in part, I'm hoping to sort of fill that gap a little bit, that if we can't go outdoors, right, if we can't go externally, we can go internally. We can go inward and we can take a look at those gateways that are within us toward reaching into essentially into, the spirit realm. I say that I'm like reaching into the spirit realm, but it's what's true, right? Because what we're doing is we're bringing these energies from the realm of the imagination, which is essentially the 5th dimension, right? We live in the 3rd dimension, and the astral plane is the plane of our imagination. So we're going to be bringing those down and incorporating them into our own energies in order to create change in the world around us. So yeah, and of course, all spiritual practices are welcome. As far as I'm concerned, every spiritual denomination or practices or pathways pantheon is welcome, because in each pantheon we're going to see those deities as archetypes, right? As potential archetypes to embody. So no matter what walk of life you come from, whether you're experienced or whether you're new and curious, I'd love to chat with you about it and see if it's right. All right, so that all being said, I want to tell you guys some stories of how magic has come true for me in my reality. And the first one I'm going to talk about is this experience that I had at the end of last year, end of 2019, when I specifically cast a spell for embodying the flow state, the perfect flow state of my angelic nature is the way that I phrased this spell when I sing. My intention that I cast was I embody the perfect flow state of my angelic nature when I sing. I'll tell you a little bit about flow states too. Flow states are one of those things that we hear a lot about in, especially in the sort of overlap between spiritual and personal development communities, where the flow state is like when you're Neo in the Matrix and all of a sudden, like, you know, Kung Fu, right? You're tapped in, you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. And especially in that very last scene in the Matrix, where the first one, right, where Neo is like dodging all of those bullets, all of a sudden he's called in his higher self. He is so super precise, hyper aware of his surroundings that he can even dodge bullets, right? That's obviously a Hollywoodization. I'm not saying that our ability to call in the flow state will help us to dodge bullets necessarily, right? But essentially it's that state of where time seems to almost slow down a little bit and we can execute everything perfectly. It's like, it's almost as though we are so hyper conscious that we can, say, dodge those bullets metaphorically, right? One by one, because time is slowing down around us, but we are so hyper attentive, right? So essentially, that was what I was looking to call in when I'm singing, right? Jesus! Oh my gosh! Jesus is actually here for this story that I'm telling. Hey, how's it going? So Jesse, I was just talking about how I cast this spell. It was at the ritual that you remember of Maurice's ritual last year. I cast this spell for I embody the perfect flow state of my angelic nature when I sing. And I was just explaining a little bit about what the flow state is. And what happened, I had it in mind to cast this intention for a little while. But for whatever reason, for a couple weeks, I kept putting it off. You know, I was like, I don't know, I'll do it later. I couldn't think of exactly how I wanted to phrase the intention, right? I wanted to call in the flow state for when I sing so I could feel that I was my most confident and my most skilled as a singer, right? If I can call in that flow state and that perfection, then it'll feel effortless, it'll feel easy, but it'll also be like in perfect alignment, right? It'll be like everything that I'm singing just feels like it's right there. So I was looking to cast that intention, and for a while I was feeling super tired every time I tried to do it, and I was like, ugh. So one day I finally forced myself to sit down, and I'm creating, I'm doing a sigil. I'm creating a sigil for this intention, which is one of my preferred methods of spellcasting. And I sat there and I'm like, literally I'm falling asleep as I'm writing on the paper. I like literally cannot keep my eyes open. And I'm like, this is weird. Okay. If so much resistance is coming up in my body to doing this right now, it must be for a reason, right? This is not just, oh, I'm feeling lazy or I don't want to do it or whatever. I'm really trying and my body is just like, not here. My body is like, no, we don't want to do this right now. So I was like, all right, there's got to be a reason for that. And then I remembered that only 2 nights later, I would be facilitating a sigil magic ritual at my friend Marisa Reyes's Ganja Yoga ritual, where she brings in these amazing guest facilitators. I was so honored to be invited by her. And we did it right around Halloween, right? It was Devil's Night. It was the night before Halloween. It was October 30th. And we decided to do something sort of spooky and witchy for Halloween. So we said, let's have a sigil magic ritual. I'll teach everyone how to create a sigil, and then we'll do, the rest of the yoga and the meditation, and then toward the end, we'll go to the fire pit. She has this gorgeous outdoor space with this fire pit, and we'll go ahead and toss our sigils on the fire, right? Because as I spoke about in the last video, episode number 1, which is on my feed, by the way, if you haven't yet seen it and you want to catch up, go ahead, it's posted on my profile. As I spoke about in the first episode, a necessary element of casting our intentions is sending them beyond the veil, right? The veil being the line, the hypothetical line, the metaphorical line between physical reality and astral reality, right? Between the world that we know here and the world of the imagination, where all ideas exist, where entities exist, and where the unseen forces that be, who are aiding to help us in the intentions that we cast and that we specifically ask for their help with, where all of those reside, right? So basically, yeah, so we're creating sigils and then we're going to burn them, right? Because that's how we, sorry you guys, I haven't had my qualia today. It serves me right. I'm like brain freezing. By the way, if you haven't tried Qualia Mind, it's awesome. All right. I clearly haven't taken mine today and my ADHD brain is going all over the place. So back to the story. So I arrive at the ritual and I think, all right, I'm going to cast that intention tonight, right? Because that's why so much resistance was coming in my body, because when I tried to cast it before, I was like, as soon as I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm teaching a sigil magic ritual on Wednesday. So there's no point in me casting this tonight and then having to redo another spell for the ritual that I'm teaching. That would take up unnecessary magical bandwidth, right? Because we want to think of our spells, our intentions that we're casting, as like large files that we're downloading, right? And we can download them all at once, but it's going to take a lot longer for all of them to come in. Or we can choose the ones that are most important, or that are the ones that we most need in order to be able to begin the kind of work that we want to do otherwise, and then kind of leave the lesser important ones to kind of just, you know, we can leave them off the table for a little bit. So I was like, yeah, there's no point in me casting this sigil tonight and then going and having to think up on the spot another sigil to cast for this specific ritual that I'm facilitating. So I'll just save it for when I'm teaching. So sure enough, I do that. And I attend the class, and before class, we're kind of all hanging out. And we're all like kind of talking to each other and being like, oh, you know, what's your story? What do you do? And I, you know, mentioned that I was guest facilitating that night. And this one woman asked me about what it is that I do, and I told her a little bit about the repatterning project, which, as probably most of you who follow me know, is the 8-week course that I created toward undoing our trauma imprints and conditioning and creating true creative freedom, right? True sovereignty, true agency in order to be able to navigate our physical reality. So I was telling her about this. And she says to me, she's like, oh, that's amazing. That actually reminds me a lot of the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Have you heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza? And I was like, yeah, I have actually. That's funny, but I haven't really engaged with his work yet. I just hear people kind of dropping his name here or there. And a couple weeks earlier, my friend Kyle Lipton, had actually tipped me off to some of his audio meditations. And I will tell the truth, I hadn't really paid attention to them yet. I was like, oh, cool. Kyle sent me a link to look at. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate you. You know, but I hadn't really deeply engaged with them because, frankly, I didn't have a lot of bandwidth. So I was grateful, but I hadn't really gone there yet. So when this woman brought up his name, I was pretty interested by that. I was like, oh, that's interesting, huh? And then, you know, we kind of fell off of that conversation and we start to gather for the class, for the ritual, and we start going around and talking about the intentions that we're going to cast for this specific ritual, right? Everyone is choosing the intention for their sigil that they're creating. I'm showing them how to create that, and then later in the ritual, we're gonna burn them and send them over to the other side officially, right? So there I am, and we're sharing our intentions, and I said, my intention is I want to, you know, my statement of intent is I embody the perfect flow state of my angelic nature when I sing. And I shared with the group that I have a really badly deviated septum. It's very true. I don't know if you noticed, but my nose goes to this side and then to that side a little bit. I'm a little self-conscious about it. I'm looking into maybe like getting it fixed. Mostly for my breathing, to be honest. If it were total vanity, I would just get over it. But as a singer, it's pretty messed up how my septum is so badly deviated from a botched surgery that I had when I was 12. I had surgery on it when I was 12. It grew back in worse, and now it's literally touching the inside of the opposite side of this nostril. So I've had doctors look up at my nose and like freak out. You know, I'm a bit of a freak of nature I suppose a freak of nurture actually, since it was from a botched surgery. But yeah, my nose is pretty whack for someone who's a singer, right? Maybe I owe it to myself to have really clear channels. So I was explaining this, and then this other woman, completely different person, runs up to me really quickly before we can get to the next person. She kind of whispers to me. She's like, oh, you know, you don't need surgery. Like, look into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I was like, well, that's interesting. That's the second person who's talked to me tonight about the work of Joe Dispenza. And I notice, you know, when things are coming in, like in threes, especially in the same 24 to 48 hour period, then I know that that's something I'm supposed to pay attention to. Spirit has gotten my attention in that way before, like putting messages in front of me multiple times, and I recognize that for the communication that it is. So the ritual goes great. You know, we do the class, we burn the sigils, everything's wonderful. And then afterwards, I can't remember who the other woman was who told me about Joe Dispenza. And I kind of wanted to ask about it again because it was like, this is strange. This is coming up twice now. So I turned to Marisa, who was leading the ritual, and I said, hey, do you remember who that woman was who ran up to me before and talked about Joe Dispenza? And as soon as I said his name, Marisa turned and she goes, oh, Joe Dispenza, I have his book, Becoming Supernatural, on my Audible, but I haven't had the time to read it yet or to listen to it yet. Maybe, she says, maybe we should all read Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza and do like a Ganja Yoga book club. So she says that, and I'm like, wow, apparently the universe is really, really pointing me toward the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and specifically to this book, which was his most recent, that came out in 2017, called Becoming Supernatural. So I bought the book. It's on my shelf, so hang on, I'm gonna grab it. Here we go. So it looks like this, Becoming Supernatural, How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I'm like, all right, there's clearly something that I'm supposed to take away from this. Don't know what it is yet, but you know, I know when the universe is telling me to pay attention. So I get to basically just past the introduction. This is chapter 1, yeah? Yeah. So it's pretty early on in the book, page 19. The book comes in after I order it, and I'm reading it. And I come across this passage where Dr. Joe Dispenza is talking about this experience that he had in a meditation where he felt that he sort of transcended his physical self and saw himself. I'll just read it to you. He says, instantaneously, I was standing barefoot in my backyard in Washington in the cold night. It's difficult to explain what time it was because it was the same night that I was in my living room. But the me who was outside the house was the me from the future in that now. Again, words are limited here, but the only way I can explain this experience is that the future personality called Joe Dispenza had changed immensely. I was so much more evolved, and I felt amazing, euphoric, in fact. I was so aware, or should I say, as that person, I am so aware. By aware, I mean super conscious, as if all my senses were heightened 100%. Everything I saw, touched, felt, smelled, tasted, and heard was amplified. My senses were so elevated that I was acutely aware of and paying attention to everything around me, wanting to experience the moment completely. And because my awareness increased so drastically, so did my consciousness and therefore my energy. Feeling so full of this intense energy caused me to be more conscious of everything I sensed simultaneously. I can describe this feeling only as consistent, unwavering, highly organized energy. It was nothing like the chemical emotions we normally feel as human beings. In fact, in that moment, I knew I couldn't even feel those normal human emotions. I'd evolved beyond them. I did, however, feel love, although it was an evolved form of love that was not chemical, but electric. I felt almost as though I was on fire, passionately in love with life. I was an incredibly pure form of joy. So I read that, and I'll hold this up. I'll see if you can see. And in the margin right there, what did I write? Right upon my first reading of it, I wrote flow state. Oh, right. That's the flow state. So I kept reading the book, and I was like, all right. And in the meantime, I did the meditations that my friend Kyle sent me a link to. And I was like, all right, so I'm supposed to surrender to this process, right? This is what I asked for. I asked for the ability to embody the perfect flow state of my angelic nature. And when I say angelic nature, I basically just mean my higher self, right? My highest potential, the me that exists in that astral astral, spiritual, physical, non-physical reality, right? The me that is my highest potential is essentially my highest self. Me in my pure soul form without any of the shitty human conditioning I've taken on, right? Me at my very best. Me as the expression of me spiritually, but as that form of pure energy, pure love, pure beingness, pure consciousness, right? So that was what I had asked for. And I was like, all right, well, clearly this seems related somehow. So let me go ahead and follow that rabbit hole and see where it leads. So I start doing the meditation, reading the book, and a lot of it actually ends up being quite similar to work that I have done in the repatterning project and work that I've done on myself, you know, in basically taking the journey that would lead to my creating the repatterning project. So a lot of it I was sort of already familiar with, but it seemed like it was a different approach. It's kind of like a different doorway to the same space, right? It's like we're getting in a different way, but it's essentially the same. It's based on the same principles. It was very, very, very much in alignment with what I already teach, but it was giving me some more tools, and especially these meditations that I started doing, because I wasn't really much of a meditator, to be honest. I enjoyed it in like classes or whatever. It was always fun, but I was never disciplined enough to develop a regular practice on my own, because also I didn't have a lot of bandwidth. But at the start of the year, I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing these meditations every day, and we'll just see where it takes me, because clearly that's what's being presented to me. So that's what I did. And then a couple weeks later, I was on a long drive, and I love long drives in the car because I'm from New York and I didn't get to have a lot of them before. So I actually really kind of enjoy driving by myself, especially at night. And typically I will put on some music. I'll put on like my pop playlist and I'll sing, right? Because I'm a singer and that's where I practice my voice and stuff like that. So I turn on some music and I start singing, and all of a sudden, I haven't sung in a couple weeks. All of a sudden I notice my voice is so much better and easier and more in flow than before. It feels like there's additional spaces that have been opened up in my body. Like I am more conscious of where my voice is going and I'm more in control of it. And I was like, wow, okay, so that worked. And the funny thing about that is that we sometimes think that magic is like, all right, I'm going to cast for I embody the perfect flow state of my angelic nature when I sing, and that that's just going to sort of magically transform me, right? That maybe the universe will just magically, like, you know, it'll just, I'll just wake up one day and I'll be able to sing better, right? But the thing about magic, and I also tried to touch on this in the last episode, the thing about magic is that it always has to come through the pipelines of physical reality. It cannot defy the laws of physics. So for me to just wake up one day with a better voice would probably not be something that would be likely to happen. And in my case, the universe knows that I read, right? My guides who work with me know the things that I'm likely to do. So essentially they were just like, oh, we just need to wait to get her to the ritual where there can be people to talk to her about this and to recommend, and we just need to make it really super clear that she needs to read this book. And in doing that, she'll teach herself how to increase her access to the flow state, right? Because that's what, in part, we're very much looking to do as spiritual practitioners, and I would also wager to say, like, as humans, right? We are looking to get to those states, if we can, where it's that peace, joy, euphoria, and that precision in the moment, right? Oh, the precision of the flow state is just so good, right? Oh, hi, Hannah. Yay. Yeah, another Joe Dispenza fan. Amazing. Yeah, I like his work a lot, right? I will say that I'd rather fit it into sort of like as a puzzle piece into a larger picture that I look at in terms of that body of work. And I think that if I had just approached it by myself before I had approached all the rest of the pieces, I'm not sure I would have necessarily understood it, or that it would have, that I would have even approached it in the right way in order to get it to be effective. But at that point in my journey, I was ready for that key piece. And the universe was like, well, we know you read books, so we're just going to put you in this place and we're going to make it incredibly, incredibly clear that this is what we want you to read. And if you follow these instructions and if you do these things, then you're going to be able to create more access to the flow state. So I got back into the studio this past summer. I started working with my friend Pete Mills, who is the singer of the Sweet Kill, awesome band. Go ahead and check him out. And I hired him as a producer to produce a couple tracks that I was working on. And when it came time for us to record the vocals, he was like, Arden, I don't even have to tune you. Like, I don't even have, like, you know, I don't have to use, like, he's like, there's no automation on this. So we chopped it up, you know, like, typically what you do in the studio is, like, you chop up the vocal, you composite it, so you're getting, like, the best take of every, like, phrase or so, right? So we did that, but he was like, this is so simple. All your takes are nearly identical, and your pitch is like, it's spot on. Like, I don't have to tune you. And that was pretty amazing for me because I had never had that experience in studio before. I was a pretty good singer, but not to the point where I could just completely skip being tuned, right? And most singers don't talk about this, right? No one wants to admit that there's like a lot of, you know, automation on their voices or whatever, but like everyone does it, so who cares? Like, we're all looking to put out a good product. There's no shame in that, right? It's like, there's no shame on that any more than there is like shame using Photoshop or whatever. It's just, it is what it is. If you want a final product to look and feel a certain way and sound a certain way, then that's what you do, right? But it was really amazing for me to go into studio and to record a song and to listen to myself back and think, yeah, no, that sounds good. I don't have any nitpicks with it. I don't have, like, this sounds good to me. And the fact that there was no tuning, no automation on my vocals. So that is the story. It was like almost a year's time, right? But between when I first cast that intention of Halloween last year and then really noticing the difference and the change in my voice this summer when I went back into studio, but I started noticing those changes at least gradually as soon as I started doing that practice. And the reason that I started doing that practice was because of all these synchronicities that came together around this one ritual where I taught this sigil magic class, where my sigil, my intention that I cast for, the spell that I cast was for, I embody the perfect flow state of my angelic nature when I sing. So magic is real, it works, right? And spirit sometimes will give you some directions to go with that, right? Sometimes it's like, it's not that it just automatically transforms you, right? It's that you are given all of the tools and environments and teachings and people and teachers and facilitators that you need to be exposed to, and all the support you need to be able to do that work, right? You might find, for example, that you cast a spell and you get really strongly led toward doing this maybe one program, right? And maybe you're like, oh gosh, I don't know if I have the money for that program, but I really feel in my heart that I want to do it. If you've been casting spells and you've been working with spirit, don't be surprised if all of a sudden the money for that program shows up somewhere completely unexpected, right? All of a sudden someone, you know, someone you sent a referral link to, like, you know, months back, all of a sudden, like, there's a big, you know, oh, someone signed up for this, and now all of a sudden we have this bonus money, this bonus affiliate money to give you, right? Or someone, you know, something happens and maybe one of your relatives, like, just unexpectedly sends you a check, says, hey, I know it's hard times out there right now, you know, so I'm just trying to see my family is taken care of, you know, all my nieces and nephews, so, you know, here's some money for that or whatever. So it is pretty wild the way that magic works, is that it will have to come, again, as I said, it will have to come through the pipeline of physical reality. It won't be like Harry Potter where you just wave a wand and something instantly changes. But the circumstances and everything that you need in order to move forward on that intention will be given to you and will be made very, very clear. You do have to know how to look for it, right? if you're so stuck in your old ways of being that you don't see the opportunities when they're given to you, that's like where it can get a little bit dicey. But don't worry, that is why we have support around that, right? That is why we have a community, and it is why I will always tell people that magic teaches you itself, right? It's very humbling being a teacher of magic, because there is nothing that I can teach you about magic that magic will not eventually teach you itself. However, if what I wish I had had then, and I had some support, but the way that I understand it now, to me feels a lot clearer, a lot more translatable. And the support that I offer people is I will tell you how to get started. I will teach you how to do your rituals, why certain elements of them are important, why, for example, you want to be careful about how you phrase things, right? You want to be careful about the choices you make for what you're casting in, and specifically, you also really want to make sure that when your intentions start to manifest, that you don't, that if there are things that come up that actually are blocks to what you want to create for yourself, to you know, that are obstacles to your intention manifesting, those will come up and be shown to you so that you can clear them, right? So sometimes if we cast a pretty heavy intention and there's a lot of stuff that may be blocking it, something that can happen sometimes is we can be subject to like, we could be at risk of catastrophizing, right? Oh gosh, everything's falling apart. Nothing ever goes my way. This is terrible and it's awful. And if we're so stuck in that low vibrational energy because we're so in so much grief or shock or attachment to the things that are coming up so that they can be released, right? They're leaving our field. They're being cleared for us in many ways, right? Or really being shown that they're not healthy to us, you know? I, cast a soulmate spell, and the first thing that happened was my ex came back because I wasn't over him. And I had to be like given aversion therapy for how bad he was and how badly he treated me, before I could actually fully move on. Of course, what I thought at the time was like, oh, I cast my soulmate spell and my ex came back. It must be him, right? No, it took me another several months to figure out what was actually going on. But again, we don't want to catastrophize, right? We don't want to get into the trap of slipping into that energy where we mistake that for being something that is negative. So that has been episode 2 of Magic is Real. Stay tuned. I'm going to be going live randomly throughout the next week and a half before we start the Myths and Magic course. And when we, as we are gearing up to begin that, I encourage you, as I said, look into the details. If you feel like it's something that's calling to you, go ahead and check out. The details are in the caption of my profile photo. You can see a bunch of flyers that I have for them on my profile if you scroll through and you want to read some more about it. And go ahead and shoot me a PM if that's something you want to join. We start Sunday, October 18th. So it's coming up pretty soon, and we're going to have that window of time right over Halloween, right when the veil is thin, for the thinnest, right? For us to be able to work our magic during that powerful, powerful window. So I'm really excited about this container, and I would love to have some more folks who have not yet worked with me to jump in and explore together. It's going to be fun, especially in these times, right? We need all the magic we can get. All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining in. I hope this was fun, and I'll see you next time.